the reason why the rabbis created the laws of mukseh, there are different reasons given in the Rishonim, in the early commentaries. Some say that they didn't want Shabbat to be like a regular day. You know, if you'll be able to handle everything on Shabbat, if you'll be moving around things, if you can move all your tools around on Shabbat, so people will be busy the whole day on Shabbat in the garage, like a lot of Americans spend their times on Sunday rearranging their garage with their tools, and they won't be using the day in a very holy spirit, in a holy focus. They'll just be distracted. That's one of the reasons for mukseh. There are other reasons given for mukseh as well. We are on the Gemara on 45a in the Art Scroll. And the last thing that we said, that we had the opinion of Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon was a little bit more lenient regarding mukseh than we hold. And he held that, let's say, example was, if you have one item, if you have an oil, Shabbat oil, yes. You want to say something, Jaime?
No, I'm okay.
Yeah, very good. So if you had a Shabbos oil lamp that you lit for candles for Shabbat, he would hold that after you lit the candles and it went out, let's say Friday night, 10 p.m. already went out, he would say you could actually move the lamp, the Shabbat lamp. He would hold it's not called mukseh once it went out. We hold that even though it's not burning anymore, once it's mukseh, when Shabbat came, because it was burning, it would remain mukseh throughout the whole Shabbat. And the Gemara had said that Reb Shimon, the Gemara had a question. Reb Shlokash asked Reb Yochanan regarding what is the opinion of Reb Shimon, and he said that Reb Shimon holds of mukseh. When does Reb Shimon hold of mukseh? Only by the oil that's in the lamp while it is burning. And he said, and Tosfos points out that means not only, of course, the oil that's in the lamp while it's burning, you can't take the oil out because that would be diminishing the flame. Because it seems that when you have a certain amount of fuel oil in the cup with the wick, removal of some of the oil could diminish the strength of the flame, and that would be a prohibition of mechaber, extinguishing on Shabbat. Just like you can't make a fire on Shabbat morning, you can't extinguish a fire on Shabbat. But the oil that drips down while the light is burning, we said that would be considered mukseh. Reb Shimon would agree that oil is mukseh. You can't catch it. Good morning, Mark.
Morning, Rabbi.
You see who's on the screen, Mark? You notice? We can't hear you. Mark, you are muted, Mark. Now we can't hear you.
Good morning, Harm.
Hi, Mark Adri.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Nice to see you smile.
Thank you.
So the Gemara went on record that the rabbi said that, who was the rabbi? He was Rabbi Yochanan. That the Rabbi Shimon, who's lenient regarding certain areas of mukseh, the case that he would agree that there's mukseh is the oil that's in the lamp while it's burning. The oil that drips down, Tosfos says, but comes out while it's burning, it's the drip. And he gives the Gemara understands that that the reason why he holds it as mukseh, because there are two things that are playing in to that are weighing in. Number one, that oil that was in the menorah that dripped out while it was burning was designated for the mitzvah of burning for Shabbat. That it was designated, you separated from yourself, that it should burn. And the mindset is, the Gemara understands, you're separating it from you as long as it's burning. Therefore, when it goes out, you could go ahead and since you know it's going to go out at a certain time, to when the fire goes out, let's say 10 p.m., you could use the oil. You could use the oil. You can move the lamp, but as long as it's burning, that oil is separated from you. Therefore, if that oil drips out, you can't catch that oil. That oil would be considered that oil would be considered mukseh. Now, and if you catch that oil, remember the Gemara discussed the idea that since that oil is mukseh, you're making the utensil that you're catching not usable because it's going to be containing a mukseh item, and you can't take a utensil that's usable on Shabbat and make it unusable on Shabbat. The Gemara says, you're taking something that's usable and making it unusable.
So you can't catch the oil.
So you can't catch the oil, correct.
Right.
But the Gemara says there's two things playing. Shimon holds because it was designated for mitzvah, and also the Gemara is reading at this point of understanding of Rabbi Yochanan, and also it was forbidden. That oil was separated from me because of sin, of isur. Because if I would handle that oil, if I would have moved that oil, I would be diminishing the oil that was in the lamp. I would be diminishing the strength of the flame of the fire. So there's two things playing that's making it forbidden mukseh. That's the type of situation that Reb Shimon would admit is an issue of mukseh. To that, the Gemara challenged, and the Gemara brought a braita that shows you that the fact that something designated for mitzvah in itself should make it classified as mukseh, that I'm separated from it because and I can't use it for personal use. It's separated from me because, and therefore on Shabbat or on Yom Tov, I wouldn't be able to handle it. Where is the story? Because the Gemara we said if you go ahead and you would decorate a sukkah on the holiday of Sukkot with walnuts, almonds, pomegranates, cluster of grapes, you put around the sukkah on the near on the walls of the sukkah or wherever you put it, places where you place these, and that's how you decorated your sukkah. You decorated your sukkah with fruits. You can't go ahead and take those fruits to use during the holiday of Sukkot, because even on Chol Moed, I can't take that fruit. I'm hungry. I want to go take a grapes from what I beautified the sukkah. I can't do that. Or let's say the Gemara said he put jugs of oil. He decorated the sukkah with jugs of oil. I can't use that oil for personal use because it was separated from me because I designated for mitzvah. And therefore on Shabbat, I can't handle it. I can't even move it. So the Gemara, and the Gemara wanted to say, and that is Reb Shimon. That Reb Shimon agrees to that idea that I can't go ahead and use an item that was designated for mitzvah. It would be forbidden. It would be mukseh. And the Gemara says, how do we know that author of that braita is Reb Shimon? So that's where we got up to, I think, last time. Remind Reb Shimon on 45:8:2. Now the Gemara is going to prove that Reb Shimon agrees to this phenomenon that during the holiday of Sukkot, good morning, Simon. During the holiday of Sukkot, I would not be able to handle those items that were separated for the mitzvah. We reminded Reb Shimon. How do we know it's Reb Shimon? Simon, we're on 45:8:2 on the right side of the page. Reminded Reb Shimon. The Tani Reb Chia bar Yosef. Reb Chia bar Yosef said the following. He said a braita, Kamei de Reb Yochanan. He said a braita for Reb Yochanan. Ein mutlin eitzin min hasukah b'yom tov. if you go ahead and you have a sukkah and um, you have wood. That's, let's say we're talking about sukkah, we're talking about a hut, and we're talking about, let's say, during the holiday of Shavuot coming up. You have a nice hut. Person has a hut that they have, and if they want to take and that sukkah is made for shade, and that hut is a tent, right? And you can't go ahead and demolish a tent on Yom Tov. Same way you can't build on Yom Tov, you can't build on Shabbat, you can't demolish on Shabbat, you can't demolish on Yom Tov. So if you're going to take some of the wood from the hut, that then that would be considered, um, destroying a tent. You take away the building. Like, you can't take bricks off a building on Shabbat, bricks off the building on Yom Tov, because that's part of taking apart a building. Even if the it fell, right? The brick, the wood from the ceiling, like we've had, we've seen on the holiday of Sukkot, the morning Asaf, we've seen, late 70s, you saw Sukkot, hurricane, big winds, maybe whatever, Sukkot fell down. So even here, let's say if it will be Shavuot or if it will be Pesach, let's say if the weather was nice on Pesach and you're in this type of hut, you can not only you can't take wood from the structure on the holiday, but even if the wood fell down on the holiday, it fell off. It was very windy and some of the wood fell down. I can't go ahead and um, handle that wood on that's on the floor. That is the first opinion, because when Yom Tov entered, or when Shabbat entered, that wood was separated from me because of the prohibition of demolishing, right? So now, even if so, it was mukseh. I would not. I have no thought of using the ceiling of a hut when Shabbat came. I can't use it. I can't use it personally when Shabbat came, because I would be demolishing if I would be using the ceiling of the roof. So now, then subsequently at 10 o'clock at night on Yom Tov, the it fell down the wood. Since it was mukseh when Yom Tov entered, it was separated from when Yom Tov entered. So this is the opinion of the Chachamim, one and which we hold the halacha. Once it was mukseh when Yom Tov came, remains mukseh throughout the what holiday. Throughout that day. However, Reb Shimon, and it says element only if there was wood that was next to the structure. Let's say it bundles of wood next to the wall. This wall that you had lined up wood next to this wall. You had bundles of wood next to the wall. That's not part of the structure, and that would not be considered a problem of taking that wood. If that will now again in general on Shabbat, let's say wood would be mukseh, but on Yom Tov you could burn wood, right? So so the wood that's next to the structure you could go ahead and take. Reb Shimon matir. Reb Shimon is more lenient. He says you could even use the wood that was serving as the ceiling, as the roof, as the shade when Yom Tov entered, because if Shimon holds, he doesn't hold of this idea that once it was separated from you when Yom Tov entered, it was mukseh, remains mukseh throughout the holiday. He says no, as long as it's separated from you, you had no right to use it. Separated from you, it's separated from you. But now that it fell down, now that the structure fell down, or a piece of wood fell down, he says if Shimon says you can go ahead and use that wood on Sukkot, not on Sukkot, on Shabbat. Let's say we'll see on the holiday of not a holiday on Pesach, or on the holiday of Shavuot. If you have this hut, Simon, and a piece of wood fell down, according to Reb Shimon, it fell down on the Yom Tov, morning Mori, Reb Shimon would hold, you could go ahead and use that piece of wood. However, of the Shavim, but both Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda, both Reb Shimon and the Chachamim would admit, even Reb Shimon would agree, the Sukkot HaChag B'Chag, if it was a piece of wood that fell on Yom Tov of Sukkot. So that piece of wood, part of the ceiling, the structure, the shade of the sukkah, if it fell down on the holiday of Sukkot, that was designated for mitzvah. Now there's something else playing a role here. It's not Rabbi Shimon doesn't care about the fact that it's part of the building. That meaning on Shavuot, on Pesach, that doesn't bother him. Once it falls down, now you want to use it, use it. But on the holiday of Sukkot, there's something else going on. The piece of wood that's in the ceiling is serving mitzvah, right? On Shavuot, on Pesach, there's no mitzvah in a hut, right? It's mitzvah to eat matzah, right? But there's no mitzvah on Pesach. There's no mitzvah of being sitting in a hut. But on the holiday of Sukkot, when this is actually a sukkah, a kosher sukkah, right, Simon? So this hut, this sukkah, is a sukkah of mitzvah. The wood that's serving as the shade, as the roof, as the ceiling of the sukkah, is designated for mitzvah. And Reb Shimon agrees that if it's designated for mitzvah, it has a status, it cannot be used. It would be mukseh. Good morning, Mark. So we see that Reb Shimon admits that the fact that something is designated for mitzvah, that makes it mukseh. That makes it mukseh. The Sukkot HaChag, Shehasura. He says that it's forbidden. I can't use it. If Shimon, he had it like that on the holiday of Sukkot, because since I designated this, what do you say? In general, he's more lenient, but he holds that throughout the holiday of Sukkot, let's say Chol Hamoed, right? Chol Hamoed, there's no problem on Chol Hamoed to take down technically of if you want to take something off, if you want to go ahead and take down a tent on Chol Hamoed, there's no prohibition of demolishing on Chol Hamoed. I mean, maybe I mean there is a good question, because there's certain things I can't do on Chol Hamoed. You know, and not everything I can do on Chol Hamoed. I can't really build on Chol Hamoed, but there's certain buildings that we do allow certain building. So we see it's, buildings maybe from mitzvah, maybe we might allow. We have to look into the halacha, but there wouldn't be a prohibition of taking a piece of wood. Let's say taking a piece of wood on Chol Hamoed down from the shade down. That would not be a we have to know about taking a building and demolishing a whole building. But if you take a piece of wood on Sukkah, that's it's serving as a shade, or on Yom Tov, on again, on Yom Tov, we say you can't take the piece of wood off. That would be getting into a problem of demolishing. But on Chol Hamoed, if you want to take a piece of wood from the ceiling down, you want to change the wood, right? Not that you're going to take the piece of wood for the purpose of using the piece of wood for personal use. But if you want to take the piece of wood down, there's no prohibition. Rashi says there's no prohibition of removing that wood per se, of demolishing. That wouldn't be a prohibition of demolishing. And yet, so that's not playing a role, but yet he holds the fact that it's designated for mitzvah. Even I would not be able to use it. I would not be able to use it for personal use, even if it falls. We have to see about even if it falls. But the point is, the fact that it's designated for mitzvah Reb Shimon agrees to the concept that designated for mitzvah is enough for creating something mukseh. Right? Good morning, Eddie. As we see that he says that on the sukkah, I would not be able to use the wood, take that wood from the sukkah and use it for personal use. But the hitna, but if I made a condition before the holiday that I said, you know what, that I want to, that I should be able, that I'm not designating this for the mitzvah, if I might want to use it for personal use, then hakol no. Then he says that you made the condition, the stipulation. Therefore, you could go ahead and use it during the, let's say, chalamoy. But we see
So I could do that with the fruit too.
fruit also, right? We said with the fruit also, you can make a condition, right? Because I'm not making it I'm not designating it for decoration. I'm saying I'm
Piece of wood is holding up the sukkah as part of the sukkah.
piece of holding the sukkah is part of the sukkah.
The fruit is decoration. But you're adding a stipulation that if in fact I want to use it on a whole head, even though I am designated. So
Yeah, okay. Maybe I'm not designating means I'm saying this is for this, and I'm not using it for personal use. That's called designation. But if I go in and say,
I'm designating it, but I'm gonna use it. So it's
yeah,
still
Chalamot is
designated.
Chag too, but Chalamot is also Chag. You know what I'm saying? So
I'm designated on Yom
no,
Tov.
even on Yom Tov, I mean, it would come out even on the Yom Tov itself. I would be able, if I make a condition, I should be able to take the apple, the orange, the pomegranate on Yom Tov itself to use.
So then it's not part of the mitzvah.
So it's interesting.
Because now you say beautify the sukkah with decorations. But I'm not making this the mitzvah. I'm designating this as I could use this. This is not designated for the Yom Tov for the mitzvah.
Right, but it might be
So then
serving. Right, but it might be, but I would still say it's still it's still beautifying the sukkah. I have something that's beautifying the sukkah that's not designated for that purpose, that it has maybe dual purpose, or it has multi-purpose, or I'm designating without, I'm not sorry, I don't say, I'm not designating, I'm using, I gotta watch my words, right? I'm using the pomegranate to beautify, but without the mindset that this is here to stay.
So then do you understand the mitzvah of beautifying the sukkah?
Yes, I would say yes, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is you beautify the sukkah. Now, it could be if you took that pomegranate during the holiday, so now you lessened the beauty of the sukkah. But but it was never intended to be permanently there. So that seems to be what the stipulation will do. So the Gemara shoots back. So the Gemara says, what does Rabbi Yochanan mean when Rabbi Yochanan says we are on 45A3? What did Rabbi Yochanan mean when he said his statement? We're now about the second paragraph. What did Rabbi Yochanan mean? So Rabbi Yochanan made the statement. He sounds like there's two things have to be met in order for Rabbi Shimon to hold of Mukseh. There has to be designated for mitzvah and also separated from me because of a possible sin, like removal of the oil while it's burning. So the Gemara says, Ke'ein shemen shebenei kamina. What does he mean? Rabbi Yochanan is saying that something, in order for something to be mukseh, it has to be ke'ein shemen shebenei, something similar to the oil that's in the menorah. oil in the Shabbat lamp, Shabbat menorah, is hoil huksel mitzvoto. When you put the oil in the Shabbat lamp, it's designated for mitzvah, right? You have a mitzvah Friday night that there should be light burning in your house, right? That's a mitzvah. The Gemara says, why should you have the light burning? For shalom bayit. There should be light in the house. People shouldn't fall, and if people fall, they're not in a good mood. It takes away from the peace that's in the house. So that's one of the main reasons why you're supposed to have light in the house. By the way, it says you should not just have light, by the way, in your dining room where you eat, and the rest of the house is dark. It's also brought down that you should have in your hallways, where you walk, there should be other places in the house. Also, that I don't know if people are aware of that. People make sure, we have a Friday night Shabbat, we like the Ken Shabbat, but the rest of the house is pitch dark. That's not appropriate, because I'm not going to fall in the dining room, but I'll fall. Maybe the guy will fall, doesn't see what's on the floor, other place in the house. So I just want to bring it to everyone's attention. Should have light in other parts of the house. You should be able to see as well. Now, you don't need to have light in your bedroom, because you can open the hallway light and you can see that can put some light into your bedroom. So if so that's something to think about. So and the rabbis were so the famous Gemara in Shabbat, that if you only have enough money for Shabbat candles or Hanukkah candles, and remember, Hanukkah candle cannot be used for personal use. You can't use the light of the Hanukkah candle to walk by. You're not allowed to use. That's why we have the shamash, the extra candle, that in case you do use the light, it's the shamash that you're using, the extra light, not the light of the menorah. So you have only, let's say, you have $1 to spend for either one candle for Shabbat, or let's say one candle for the menorah. Shabbat, the custom is we use 2 candles, but technically, if you don't have 2 candles, you could be okay with 1 candle. If you don't have 2 candles, because the point is having light. The point of having light, so you have, of course, 2 candles represent Zachav and Shamar. That Hashem said by the 10 Commandments, remember the Shabbat and don't violate the Shabbat, the do's and the don'ts of Shabbat, but technically 1 is enough. So if you only have enough for either Shabbat candle, which you'll have benefit from and use, you only have enough for what? For menorah of Hanukkah, what do we say? Who's the winner? Shabbat candle. Shalom Bayit is so powerful. Having peace in one's house is more powerful than even fulfilling the mitzvah of menorah, of Hanukkah. So you know what? It comes out.
On the first night.
Say it again.
Shabbat never is on the first night.
I'm not sure. I don't remember. But whenever that comes out, if Shabbat comes out of Hanukkah, that's the power of Shalom. The both. It's never the Daraita.
No, you're right.
They're both Hanukkah and Shabbat candles are both Rabbanan, but they're Rabbanan. Yeah. So now the Gemara says, Ho'il v'huksa l'mitzvato, since it is separated for the mitzvah of burning, for the mitzvah of Friday night. So how huksa li'isuro? Huksa li'isuro means that how much time am I designating, Shimon, how much time am I designating this, separating from this oil that's in this candle? When is the mitzvah? When it goes out, and that's right. So that's called right. And he's saying that's what he means. Huksali Yisuro. Huksali Yisuro means that it's separated from me during the time of the mitzvah. Because the time of the mitzvah is where it's also, how long is that? As long as it's burning, as long as there is a possible violation of removing of Isur, right? It's separated from me. How long is the guy separated, has a mind to separate from this oil? As long as the Isur, as long as it be forbidden for me to remove this oil. When is it forbidden for me to remove this oil? As long as it's burning.
dim the light.
If I could dim the light. That's what he means. He doesn't mean that you have to have two things going in hand. The second statement, it's enough that if it's separated from me because of the mitzvah, that's enough to make it called mukseh, because it's separated from the mitzvah. But the second statement of huksali, that it's separated for isur, doesn't mean that it's also separated and also there's something else playing a role, that it is in addition to be separated from me because of mitzvah, it's also separated from me because I might do a sin. No. The second statement is saying, how much is the time that it's separated from me to do for the mitzvah? What it's identifying, it's clarifying what is that window of time that it's separated from me for the mitzvah. So you know what the window of time that it's separated from me from the mitzvah is the window of time, as long as it's burning, which is the time that it will be forbidden for me to remove the oil. That is the amount of time that it's separated from me from the mitzvah. But once it goes out, I could use it. Again, the halacha is not going to say that. We're going to say once it's mukseh when Shabbat enters, then it remains mukseh for the whole Shabbat. Right. Itmanami, the Gemara says, it's only mukseh Reb Shimon, ela ke'ein shemesh habenes. So the Gemara is proving the point that we found this concept. It's using this as an example. Ke'ein, if it's something similar to the oil in the menorah, b'shah shehu dolek, the time period that it is burning, since it's designated for its mitzvah, so huksal lisuro, it's designated during the time that will be prohibited to remove that oil. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Now, the Gemara is going to say another example where Rabbi Shimon would agree of mukseh. Right? So far, we have very few cases that on the record where Rabbi Shimon would agree to mukseh. And now the Gemara, we're now on 55a3 to the right top. If let's say you had figs and you put the figs on your roof, Simon, you had a nice roof out there and you put the figs on the roof to dry. Or you had grapes and you put the grapes out to dry. Now, when you dry a fruit, you are going to be adding a lot of life to that fruit, a lot of what's it called, shelf life to the fruit. But the fruit has that moisture in the fruit, and that moisture in the fruit can make the fruit go rotten, and it goes rotten, it's spoiled. But if you go in and you dry it, it takes out the moisture, and then you just like salt. Salt is a preservative. It draws out the liquid. It's like, we use salt to salt a meat and chicken. It draws out the blood, right? Because that's the reason why we soak and we salt. Soak for a half hour, we salt for an hour. Every piece of meat, every chicken you eat that, and you got it soaked and salted. And then we wash it after that. But so the salt will take out so now you want, they do, okay. My wife doesn't do that. She never soak and salt it. My father had the butcher shop. He would soak and salt, but those days are gone. Now you don't see it in the mom and pop shop. It's only done in the machabi, in the big places, and in the warehouse.
Once I was in Florence, and I went to a kosher butcher. The guy speared the oil.
He soaked and salted, right?
No, he gives me the meat. He says,
You soak and salt.
You soak and salt. So
Wow.
now I have no idea how to do this.
Wow.
I call my rabbi, I call my mother, I call my grandmother. No one knew how to do it.
Wow. Okay. So I will tell you that I presume.
There was no AI.
So I'll tell you like this. I have a cousin who's turned Hasidic. Okay. So I think she's the only person that I know that actually, she lives in Borough Park, she actually soaks and salts today. Because everybody, what happened now, in my days growing up, it was the butcher shops that soaked and salted the meat. People in their houses didn't actually soak and salt the meat. But today, so now it's very interesting what Mark is saying, because if you travel outside in the US, you got to watch out. Who knows what's going on? Maybe they give you, you don't they think you're going to soak and salt it. But today, it doesn't. You don't see the soak and salt it, and I presume it's done in the warehouse, wherever they're doing it in mass production. I don't know if anybody is soaking and salting. But I can imagine if you go to other countries, I can imagine in Israel today. I can imagine in Israel that
My mother used to do it all the time.
your mother soak and salt.
They put the salt on it, 30 minutes, and on the rack. And then she put it on the strainer, exactly, and she wash it.
Is
That's
that-
what they told me, yeah.
So I can say,
They put it on the rack for a couple days. That's how we grew up.
so I mean, so when I know my father, when I recall, it was 30 minutes in the pail of water. First, you soaked it for 30 minutes, totally immersed. You saw the water turn red. Then afterwards, you salted it for an hour. That was what he did. And you have a certain, like you said, the board, it has holes in it, and you have also, it's on a slope. There's certain laws, and then and you call it a rack, whatever you want to call that board, and totally put the salt all around it. And then after that, you would hose it down, because whatever blood was drawn out through the salting process would come out. Okay, we're going to continue tomorrow, Bezat Hashem, with this new point of Reb Shimon, that he would agree that when you bring the stuff to the roof to dry out, then you're really separating from it. And therefore, and we're going to see, and therefore he would agree that also would be considered mukseh.
Shimon would say you have to hold till after Shabbat.
Right, you won't be able to use those grapes that you put on the roof, even if, let's say, after you put it on the roof, you want to change your mind, you want to bring it back down. Once you did that action, you put it on the roof, but what happens is right here you separate it from it, and what usually once it starts ripening, it's not edible right after that. So therefore, that level of putting it on the roof, you did an action to separate from it. Then he would agree. Now, if I want to change my mind subsequently, I can't get Shabbat is over. Okay, so we'll see that more tomorrow. Have a great day. Time flies when you're having fun, right, Mark?